the show that you put on up at Pinky's with Flotsam and Jetsam.
They had a backing track, all the chorus.
Yeah. And the song started and he wasn't singing, but then it was all, he's just standing there. Yeah, dude, after that, I sold my Jag Panzer CDs and my Jag Panzer long sleeve shirt, and then a couple years went by. I was like, God damn, I kick ass. I should have kept all that stuff. Like, everybody kind of does it.
It kind of depends on what it is, too.
And see, actually, that would probably work. We should probably get going, because that's kind of in the context of Ozzy, too. So he's not the best vocalist live.
So when I met the guys from...
Here, come over.
Yeah, we better... we're already...
We can't even remember his lyrics out.
Do you have one more chair somewhere?
Yeah, I got the drum stool, I think. See how easy that is when you're already talking.
Do you want beer?
Yeah, please.
I'll take one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Josh? Yeah, I'll have one.
I'm good.
Go in the end.
Alright, we got Dustin, we got Keith, we got Devin.
Much far away.
No, you should be good.
Okay,
Should the door be closed? Do you care?
No, I really like the traffic noise in the background. It kind of makes it
siren go by.
gritty, yeah.
Yeah. I might turn off the television. I think it's too hot. We'll turn it back on.
We got Keith. Dustin, how do you want to be intro? Keith, you're from Silencer, does that work?
Yeah, of course.
And you're
Shredder
skate shop local.
Yeah.
You want any mention of like Z-Flex or anything?
Let's give a shout out to Z-Flex.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, no, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
It's not really a skateboard
Want to mention BC or anything?
No.
Okay. Devin, what do you got? What do you want to be known for?
I don't know.
You could have said skate on the team here or something.
Yeah. Local music aficionado.
That'll work. Sure.
All right. Do you want to do a shout out to? Was it Fat Jacks?
Legal Pete's.
Legal Pete's.
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
You can. Maybe I'll say it.
Right,
Yeah,
cool.
you may recognize it from Legal Pete's, something like that.
Cool.
I don't even know what Fat Jacks is. What is Fat
It's a
Jacks?
sandwich shop,
Pancakes.
isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Is it? I don't know.
Pancakes?
Well, let's flapjack it.
Yeah, fuck it. I don't know. Are you recording?
Yeah. I've been since you guys were talking over there.
All right, you can probably take some of that out. The pancake thing was funny though.
Some of it's good though. Some of it's good.
All right, you're the editor. You're in charge of that. So
But shout out to Z-Flex. Yeah.
Z-Flex.
Ruling.
All right, here we are, episode number 2. Chain Reactions. Talking shit.
Where are we at? Address?
We are at 8799 West Colfax, Lakewood, Colorado 80215.
And here we go.
Here we go. Let's talk shit. Today, we're talking about the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal, the madman Ozzy Osbourne. Just announced his second farewell tour. No More Tours 2.
There was a first one?
Yeah.
92.
92, yeah. And there's a couple of conflicting stories about that, right? So one was that he was bored with touring. He was just kind of over it. And then later said that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It was MS. That he was diagnosed with MS. And so that's why he wasn't going to tour anymore. Turned out it wasn't MS. It was Parkinson's, right? Or does he have Parkinson's? Or am I making that up? I don't know.
The tremors, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But originally they said he had MS, and he said that was part of the reason of not touring. But he only sat out for how long? Like a year, 2 years?
That was what, in his early 40s.
Yeah.
Thinking back how long ago that was. It wasn't that long ago. Well, for...
And we saw him on the Retirement Sucks tour. So, yay, Ozzy's back. Saw him at McNichols Arena on New Year's Eve. Geezer was playing bass, and I remember at that time thinking that was the closest to seeing Sabbath
Right.
that I was ever going to get. who would have known that just a few years later it'd be a Sabbath reunion. But let's just start with, kind of go around the table here. Anybody jump in? What's your earliest memories of Ozzy? How did you get into Ozzy?
Yeah, mine's from my dad. He's a Black Sabbath head, and I remember him always. He's told the story several times, but it was they went to go see Black Sabbath. They had to drive to Indianapolis, so they drove all the way out there. Took some strawberry mess, whiskeyed out, whatnot, and they went there. The show was canceled due to an illness in the band.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me this. Yeah.
And so my dad had to drive back, already all tripping, partied out. And he had this girl he went to school with in the van with him, and I guess they got caught like a blizzard. Drove his van into the gutter somewhere. The chick cracked her head open. She was like going to be a homecoming queen, whatnot. But she never talked to my dad again because she ended up having like this gnarly scar running across her head from my dad from trying to go to an Ozzy concert or a Black Sabbath concert. So he told me that when I was a pretty little kid, and then I, learned what Black Sabbath was, and then the whole '80s thing with the bat and the.
So, did you know Sabbath first or Ozzy first?
I guess it'd be Sabbath, but then I knew who he was through that. Yeah.
See, I was different. I had discovered Ozzy, and then my dad saying, "Hey, have you ever heard Black Sabbath?" And of course, I kind of heard of them. You're like 10 years old or whatever. Your music expertise isn't that that deep. But I was like, oh, wow, Ozzy's got another band, and like, oh, Black Sabbath. Keith, how about you?
Yeah, so I remember I was pretty young, and I think I knew of Scary Ozzy before I knew any of his music, and it was the bat and all that kind of stuff. And it probably took a life of its own.
I've got it tattooed on my chest.
Nice, dude. It probably took a life of its own and became a bigger story than it even really was until I read about what really happened much later.
Yeah.
But I was terrified of him. And I knew of Ozzy before I even heard any of his music. And when I finally heard the music, I think Ultimate Sin was the first studio album I was really conscious of coming out. I was like, the music, that album wasn't the heaviest, at least the single Shot in the Dark wasn't the heaviest song or the darkest song. And like, oh, really? Okay, that's not so scary. He comes in the video, he's got his big gown on the stage.
Looks like Bette Midler or something.
It's a great video, yeah.
It is a great video. And then I started kind of going back in time and found Bark at the Moon and some of the earlier ones, like, oh, okay, now I kind of see. But I was getting older at the time, too. At the same time, early Sabbath was introduced to me, so we sold our soul for rock and roll cassette that we would play all the time.
That was the first Sabbath album I had too.
Nice. Playing Dungeons and Dragons all night. That fit the mood, It was really cool. So then this persona grew.
See, that was us to the T with sold our souls for rock and roll on the turntable playing Dungeons and Dragons.
It's a good life.
I would say, I'd heard of Ozzy as well for very similar kind of ideas, and Shot in the Dark video specifically, like we had MTV and I was a latchkey kid, and so I would catch that a little bit. And I had an older cousin that skated a ton, and he made me a mixtape. I remember he took an old Crash Test Dummies tape and like taped over it, and he put Master of Puppets on one side and We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll on the other, and like totally set me on the right path. I think I was maybe 12.
Hell yeah.
Maybe. It was amazing. Yeah. I owe a lot to my cousin for sure.
I was one album before you guys. I was my introduction was basically Bark at the Moon. I was familiar with the covers of Blizzard of Oz, and especially Diary of a Madman and Speak of the Devil, because they were scary to go to the record store. I was into, at that time, it's early mid '80s. I was into Kiss and Jay Giles band, Steve Miller band. Greg Kidd band I really liked for some reason. Men at Work. But was starting to get into heavier stuff and see those records in the bin. But then it was Ozzy. Bark of the Moon had come out or was just about to come out.
That cover scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Which one?
Bark at the Moon. I thought, but it was fascinating at the same time.
Ozzy was on Solid Gold. And yeah. And I was like, oh, holy shit. God, look at this. This is Ozzy. This is that guy with those scary album covers. And he did Bark at the Moon and So Tired. And I think he did So Tired first. And I was like, oh, this kind of whatever. And then came back, and then, they showed some videos or whatever they did on the Solid Gold Dancers. And then he did Bark at the Moon. I was like, oh, I get it. And there was this. It was really weird. Even any of this could have happened because I lived way out in the woods. We didn't have a neighbor for probably about a mile, other than these 3 houses that were right together. One kid in it was like 2 years older than me, and that's when we were like 12 years old, still friends to this day. And then the other house was just these old people, but they had grandkids that would come visit from Las Vegas. And I remember the girl Dee bringing she had an Ozzy Osbourne Diary of a Madman cassette, and I was like, all right, so remember she was like, hi, the rockers in Vegas. I remember she used to have, I was a little heavy metal kid. Like, then she came out, showed me that, and came back the next summer, and I had long hair, Ozzy shirt on. Like, she's like, all right, there you go, man. Probably my earliest Ozzy story, though, was, I only know it from my dad telling me because I was being born at the time. And it's a great story.
You don't remember that?
No, I don't. I actually had to ask my dad, did that really happen? Did you tell me this story, or am I just fabricated this over time? Back then, it's 1971. It's not like it is now. The father doesn't hang out in the delivery room and watch the baby be born at different times, right? So they strategically place bars next to the hospital, and the father goes hangs out in the bar until the baby's born, then walks across the street, buzzed, I guess, to meet his kid. Well, my dad
should be.
Yeah. My dad said he was sitting at the bar, and the song Black Sabbath came on the radio, and that was his introduction to Black Sabbath, and the phone rang that I had just been born.
Oh,
nice.
That's
awesome. So
first heavy metal song.
Yes.
Almost.
And I was like, that's awesome. Like, I just planned it from my celestial being.
Do you think he had an Omen baby at first, or just was...
I don't know. I think he didn't think too many. Who knows what he's saying? He's buzzed, just had a kid, and Sabbath's on the radio. There's probably a lot going on.
Say what song it was?
It was Black Sabbath.
Oh, Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
I remember staring at that album cover and being unsure, is that a woman, or is that a guy, or is that like a priest, or is that some kind of demon? And it was just all these way pre-internet.
Oh,
right?
for
so
sure.
Theories like on bulletin boards, and anytime you'd hang out with friends as, who is that? What is that?
Yeah.
And never heard it explained to this day. He was probably somebody in the art department at the label who put it together.
Probably.
But it was, to this day, like, they had no idea.
Somebody's sister or girlfriend.
Exactly. Like, put on some pale makeup.
Yeah.
You'd look at those album covers and you'd make up your own stories, and then you'd basically commit them to your own facts.
Right.
We had determined, probably we being my brother and I, maybe probably Travis too, that was the Wizard, because the Wizard was on the album. Like, that's the Wizard.
That's
cool.
Yeah.
That's him right there.
That's excellent.
That's the only reason you should learn how to play harmonica, just for that.
Yeah.
The intro there.
And Cheater on the first Priest album had harmonica too.
It
It's
did,
kind of like a Birmingham thing, I guess. Throw some harmonica.
Throw some harmonica in there.
Sometimes I think about like my kids, and in general, and now everything can be Googled.
Yeah.
And I just love taking like record covers at face value, and then your friend tells you something, and that's the truth until
Oh yeah.
who knows when you figure it out is amazing. Or I like to think about people's moms finding records. Like I know my mom found multiple records and was shocked, and I think about don't break the oath, but my mom found that and just was like floored and so upset with me, and I was like, well, it's not quite what you see, but like how do I prove her wrong when I'm 14?
Well, in the last episode we were talking about Slayer, and I was talking about that's how I got my copy of Hell Awaits, because my friend Lance, his mom was making him get rid of it. And it's funny, that's how I got my copy of Don't Break the Oath too.
Nice.
This other dude's parents were making him get rid of that record. It's like, I'll take that.
Oh yeah. I got a few of those through school. I just learned to keep them in my backpack.
Yeah.
Take them out only when my folks were at work.
I never had to hide records from my parents. They were always more than happy to. I didn't come from a rich family by any means, but they were music lovers as well, so they didn't mind buying me Ozzy records or, Guar and stuff when I was young,
Pretty lucky.
punk rock stuff, and
So there's a couple things right there. It's like pre-internet and stuff, and so Ozzy was one of those, and in some regards still is, but he's definitely been humanized. But back then, we stare at these album covers and we make up these stories. And Diary of a Madman was a great one to make up the stories. He's like, what happened between the front and the back of the album, and what's going on, and that little kid's him, and like there's this upside down cross on the wall, and you know, and then bands like Kiss, and then maybe even later Motley Crue, but turned them into these superheroes, these larger than life like deities.
And Ozzy was really good at that because he was kind of a lightning rod. I remember he'd always be in the news. He'd be the poster boy for if something was wrong with the youth and it was heavy metal. He was always in the discussion.
Yeah,
and I find that missing now.
Yeah,
there's no mystery. Like here's my Instagram of me making coffee. Well, I kind of like not knowing what was going on behind the scenes. And in that mystery building, you saw them walk out on stage, and they were this god. You know, they were this. And then you read enough interviews now and that sort of thing. You realize they're just people too. Yeah. But that part of show business is gone, right? Largely it's gone. And Ozzy was particularly good about that. He's always been kind of a harmless, bumbling fool. Right. Like to get high, whatever. But you never knew that if you not only believe what you read in Hit Parader or something like that, and then you saw him walk out on stage with the crosses on the on the backdrops and all that. And to me, you know, a modern band, Ghost, was trying to pull that off. They've kind of been unmasked.
They're the closest thing still.
To that kind of behind the scenes thing you didn't know about, and you didn't know what they looked like.
So Dave Smalley, like Down by Law, Dag Nasty, he's a big like classic metal fan. I talk to him on Facebook sometimes about some of that stuff, or at least comment on his shit. But he went and saw Ozzy night before last, and that was his thing. He's like, Ozzy was amazing, but you know, Priest is, you know, who knows what they have left in the tank. The big bands, you know, Iron Maiden, Scorpions, they're barely hanging on. Ozzy's calling it. Like, who's going to replace any of these bands?
Yeah, I have a theory about that. I've been saying the same thing. There's no next wave of bands that are filling these halls, right, with that. I don't think anyone's going to step up until all the original guard are gone. I think there'll still be a market for it, and then Mastodon or Lamb of God or some of these other ones there, and the younger audience, of course. It's going to take all the big ones being gone because the demand is still there, right? Ozzy still brings he still packs a big house. Priest still packs a big house, right? You know,
Marilyn Manson took on some of that to some extent, and maybe still does. I don't know how big the crowds are. Well, didn't Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie just play fiddlers?
Yeah, I wasn't at that one. I went to the last show he did at the Fillmore, so maybe 2/3 capacity. And
oh, really?
I mean, it's borderline like an electronic dance band at this point. I mean, you know, like, and I think that's the problem too. Is a lot of guitar music is just younger folks aren't into that right now, and it's disappointing. And at some point, I think there'll be that great resurgence. Yeah, totally.
It comes back in cycles.
You mentioned earlier, like in Ozzy, again, like you talked about on 2020 and him being like the lightning rod. Mm-hmm. What do you guys remember some of that, like those news shows in the 80s, and they're like exploring like Satanism and stuff? I remember.
We're all doing.
Oh yeah, I think it was 2020, and I remember I was babysitting this kid and his little brother.
Who would let you babysit?
Yeah, it's like these little kids, like right. But that's the thing. I'm the babysitter, but I listen to Ozzy, and then on 2020 they have this. Basically, they show Motley Crue, and they show the Looks That Kill video and the pentagram, and fire, and then they show Ozzy and Werewolf, Bark at the Moon. And then basically the punchline of the segment. Oh, an Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, of course. Punchline of the segment was, if your kid listens to these bands and plays Dungeons and Dragons, he is a Satan worshiper. And I go to school the next day with my Motley Crue Boys in Action shirt, my Dungeon Master's Guide. Everybody looking at me like,
we saw about you last night.
Yeah, little pamphlets they gave out too. It was like, is your son or daughter participating in heavy metal and all this and whatnot?
I'd put money down if you could somehow gather statistics on all the kids who grew up on metal, Dungeons and Dragons, just that whole wing. The crime would be way lower than all other segments of society because we had that outlet.
Yeah.
Right? That was where we got it off. You know, we got our darkness off in fantasy world and rocking out in our room and not going and mugging somebody or robbing a bank or something like that. I contend that to this day.
Yeah,
I consider myself fortunate for that.
No, same for me. I mean, I was rarely like out running the streets and raising hell because if I knew I got in trouble, then I didn't get to go hang out with my friends or I wasn't going to get to go to the next show. Yeah, like
totally.
there's other things that are more important than me acting like an idiot.
Yeah, all I want to do is listen to rock and roll music and ride my skateboard.
Yeah.
And I was good, you know. Like,
I think I embraced some of the stereotypes. I was like, I'm supposed to be this degenerate guy, like vandalizing stuff and
With your white Reeboks
getting wasted. So I guess that's what we're supposed to do. But at the same time, certainly, you know, there were kids that were worse than us, but embraced a little. Okay, that's what they think. I guess I'll try it out. See how that.
Rebellion. There's rebellion. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's how far can you take it. You know,
I remember being in
control it, I should say.
Probably 8th grade, I think, and being sent to the counselor's office for no other reason other than being into all this stuff. I'm sitting in the counselor's office. I got like the spiked armband on, fingerless leather gloves, and an Iron Maiden trooper shirt on.
Yeah.
And you know, the counselor's like, "Why are you wearing those gloves?" I'm like, "I don't know, because Vince Neil does." You know, I'm like, "What's that armband?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's cool." You know, like, and just it is that not really being able to answer the questions. Like I don't know. I never thought of why. And her just being stumped, like, why do you look like that? Like, what are you doing? Who are you? Are you practicing Satanism? Like, no. I play Dungeons and Dragons.
You mentioned, Ozzy's retirement, his first retirement. What did you think of the comeback album, Osmosis?
Osmosis was okay, and...
Well, I guess, did you like No More Tears?
Yeah, I did. I did like No More Tears.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought...
I listened to that a few weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, it's a great record.
I think there's pretty much no weak track on it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking Osmosis was kind of like a harder, grittier edged.
Yeah.
A little less ballad prone, but like Old LA Tonight being really cool on side B. There's another thing, record sides. But we can go off on that. But I saw that tour at Fiddler's Green, and I didn't have good seats. I was way back on the lawn. And I remember it being really good. Filter opened, which Filter on their own are fine, but it was kind of an interesting pairing. But that was kind of in the 90s when no one knew what was going on and no one knew how to really build a bill. And my brother saw that show in Albuquerque at Tingley Coliseum, and the metal fans back home are, my God, they're so tried.
Albuquerque's a crazy metal town.
Unbelievable. And during Filter's set, they started chanting Ozzy in between every song. And I actually saw that during Alice in Chains' set for No More Tears at McNichols. But they started chanting Ozzy, and then I think Brian Patrick's the name of the guitarist in Filter, the vocalist. He obviously took the bait, and he shouldn't have, and started kind of hollering back at the fans. And then they started... and there's a lot of Native American metalheads in New Mexico.
Oh, for sure.
Huge, right? They call them the death metal Navajos. Everybody knows who they are. And they were down front. They started throwing stuff, and the other guitarist pointed at a guy, and jumped in after him, jumped into the audience, and then a bunch of roadies come out, pull this guitarist out, and he's kind of dazed. And my brother's telling me this is kind of bloody nose, and they're only halfway through their set. The band was so angry that they just started making the worst feedback they could through their back line. Just
no way, really?
And then Ozzy came on and all was well again, But it just speaks to the diehard nature of the Ozzy fan,
At the on that New Year's Eve show, it was Korn that opened, and same thing. Everybody's chanting Ozzy while Korn was playing. They didn't fall for it. They played their full set and then left, but. It was 2 days later. I worked at this. It's not there anymore on 17th Street, the Wall Street Deli, and breakfast was over at 10:30. But all the food's right there still, right? Korn comes in, and it was like 10:30 on the dot. I hadn't put it away yet, and they're like, "Hey, can we get some breakfast?" I'm like, no. And we're like, well, why not, man? It's like breakfast is over at 10:30, and they're like, "But it's all right there." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." No breakfast, so it's over. And they were just like, the fuck, dude? And like, I'm packing up. Well, can I get some of that before you pack it up? Like, no, breakfast's over. You have to order lunch. And the one dude, is there a dude named Monkey or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually said, he pulled the, do you know who I am card? And like, yeah, I saw the other night with Ozzy. You guys sucked. No breakfast. You know, like that was my interaction with Korn.
That's a good story.
No breakfast for you. That was a fun show. We ate a bunch of acid before that show. I almost fell out of the balcony. This big headbanger dude grabbed me and pulled me back. It was pretty fun. So we were talking a little bit earlier. I'll ask this question. I'll bring that dude up. Here's my thing. Let's make a statement, and then you can elaborate on it. You watch you read the comments on Blabbermouth or whatever, and you're like, he needs to hang it up. And, he sounds terrible. Ozzy's never been a great vocalist live. And my statement is, if you're going to hear a stellar vocal performance, don't go. Just stay home. You need to go to experience it. That's Ozzy, and he is the godfather of heavy metal, and everybody's going to be singing along. So you have to embrace that. If you have the attachment that Ozzy's going to be, has this golden voice, you're going to be disappointed.
It's kind of like your favorite drunk uncle. You know what you're getting.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You go to Thanksgiving dinner and it's going to get off the rails part ways through, and he's going to be yelling about something. And that's kind of how Ozzy's always seemed to me.
But I think that's like the joy in it.
Oh, it is. I meant that in the most endearing way. It is. I just think joy.
People shit on it so hard on the internet to the point where it makes it seem way worse, and then you go like the last Sabbath show, it was way better than I expected.
It was.
The performance itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I expected the band to be tight, and I expected Ozzy to be okay. I don't know. I give him like a C+, B-. Like, he wasn't soaring by any means, but it was fun and it's enjoyable. And it's just like being in the
doing it.
Fact, he's just being in the presence.
And he has a little hobble back and forth across the stage and that kind of thing. One thing I noticed about that last Black Sabbath show I saw here at the Pepsi Center was I went in with low expectations, and I didn't travel to Vegas like you did to see the album tour, which I didn't regret. I was folding my arms because Bill Ward was excluded, and then I bought the album later.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I fucked up. It's a really good album. But when they played, first I was bummed they didn't play any 13 tracks, but of course they're trying to close it out and play nothing but classics. I remember being really impressed with the first few songs, how well he sang. And then when they played Into the Void and one other where he sings in a lower register is where he started having pitch problems. And it was only those two songs. Oh, After Forever. And those songs kind of have that kind of speaking range of singing. And that's where I think he loses, and where he's probably refused to wear in-ear monitors, whatever. But everything else, the stuff where he sings high, like Fairies Wear Boots or any of those, he was really good. And you're right. His voice is, I put it like, okay, so you have the operatic metal guys, right? You have Halford, Dickinson, Tate, even King Diamond, right?
Yep.
And that kind of thing. And they're singing, right? And then you have Blitz, Lemmy, Kronos, and Ozzy. There's and more modern Matt Pike from High on Fire. They're singing, but it's that real kind of pained, gravelly voice. Ozzy's always had that, right? He's had cleaner moments back in the day and whatever. But my expectation is when I go in, it's going to be that kind of warbly sound. I still always hope to hear it in key, but it's a package deal, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you went and saw this most famous, your favorite band, and they were all completely hammered and the place ended up on fire, that's going to be the show that everybody talks about forever. Like, I was there that night. Right? So I see, like, Ozzy kind of got off on that one. We all kind of chuckled. And maybe I have to accept it at the end. That's the show. That's what makes it live. We were talking about backing tracks before we started the podcast.
Yeah.
I'd rather hear somebody miss a note, right? 10 times out of 10. And know that it's truly live than hear a backing track.
That's it. I would rather, exactly. I'd rather hear Ozzy's voice crack than to have this perfect vocal performance and find out later that was all backtrack.
Sure. But I think that's what you get with Ozzy. It's authentic. Good, bad, or otherwise, really you get the best version of him that night and take it or leave it. But, I don't know. It's like a pilgrimage. I mean, you get some beers with your friends. You go out, just like what you do. And I don't know, man. It's such an experience. Like,
it doesn't have to be perfect art, but it's our
absolutely.
art.
Absolutely.
I want to address a rumor that I heard a few years back. For a while, we shared a guitarist with Angel Dust.
Yeah.
And he knew a lot of people in the industry. He was kind of further along his career than we were. And he had heard a rumor that this would have been early 2000s. So I don't even remember what album was Ozzy was supporting in the early 2000s, but that he had a backing vocalist, that they had found a vocalist who sounded a lot like him, and he stood in an isolation booth backstage, and he could be ready at a moment's notice if Ozzy's voice would go out, because at this period his tour he was having like a rough go.
Yeah.
And the other thing he was talking about was the effects rack that his vocals went through was like as big as like some guitarists. Like think of like David Gilmour, the
sure
legendary.
I always imagine that his vocals probably did go through some
he had a
thing that helped
harmonizer.
matched it to his vocal, right? Or whatever
like
you,
that, just
however
to
you
punch certain frequencies and all that kind of thing. That was one rumor, and I just that that's entirely plausible when you have 15,000 people in there. There's that strong desire to want to have a good show and everybody gets their money's worth. But I never wanted to believe it, and luckily that was an isolated story, and I never heard it confirmed. But it always makes you think,
Yeah. But then you go back to where, and maybe it was because there was that period there where his voice was pretty bad. I saw him.
Well, you'd forget his lyrics too, and they had to write them down. That was another
Yeah.
too.
Really?
Like, I don't know if that's.
Well, he's got the teleprompter, and he gets shit for that. But a lot of
guys
bands use teleprompters. Even Social Distortion. Mike Ness tapes the lyrics to the stage.
I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, especially if you're Ozzy, and there's a lot not going on. I was going to say that there was that period where his voice was really bad, and we saw him. I remember Rob Zombie opened, and coming out of that show, Ozzy was having a really hard time, and I would say that there wasn't a backup vocalist, otherwise he would have sounded better, right? And that's where I came out of that with I've always kind of had a love-hate relationship with Zakk Wylde. He doesn't know that, but I sometimes dude fucking rips, but he's kind of a knucklehead, and his fucking bro vibe kind of bums me out sometimes, but whatever. That show, he did a really good job of. If Ozzy was starting to drag, say, on a song like Into the Void, where he's got that kind of that pacing, and he couldn't get it right. Zach, looking at who was playing drums back then, the Faith No More guy,
Mike Borden.
Yeah, Mike Borden, looking at each other like, okay, let's slow it down. Ozzy's dragging. Okay, here he comes. Everybody, pick it back up. The band did a remarkable job of kind of carrying him, man. And I remember
Not playing to a click track, so you can do that on a live show.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that stuff for me says that, and again, it could have been an isolate, maybe it was some big festival in Europe or something, like this has to be perfect, or, but for the most part, I think that he's delivered a live vocal. If not, it seems like it would be more consistent.
If I'm not mistaken, I know he had a female backing vocalist on the Sabbath tour, but it wasn't by any means to fill in for what he was doing.
It was another layer.
Yeah, it was basically another. Yeah, and it was obvious that it wasn't just to kind of pad the vocals. So
yeah. What was I gonna say there? I mean, there's Vince Neil's another vocalist. I wouldn't even call him a vocalist, almost more of a front man.
Yeah, that's a good description.
He struggled back in the early '80s, and people would go see Motley Crue like, oh, he sucks. Like, he's always sounded like that. Like, if you are going to hear, his operatic, these crystal vocals, it's not the right show. Even Rob Halford, obviously he's old now, older. His vocals, you can tell where he's like, all right, I'm going to kind of sit back a little on this because I know later in the song I'm really going to have to go for it. I'll kind of
he'll change the melody a little bit to get to the high piercing part that everybody knows.
Yeah,
he
pulled it off.
He did that a little bit with Painkiller at the Loveland show.
Yeah, he did.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because you're human, right?
Sure.
It kind of speaks to, and I have this whole theory about metal vocals and about metal in general, and I listen to a lot of extreme metal as well. And I started thinking, okay, this is a young man's game because these bands aren't going to be able to reproduce this in their 50s and 60s like a Black Sabbath still can or whatever. But if you look at vocalists, Dio went out sounding like Dio.
Yeah.
I called him like the Frank Sinatra, right? Sinatra sang until he died. He never really sang at 100% of what he could do in his prime. He always sang maybe at the 70% range. And Dio was the same way. He'd have a scream here or there. right? But he always sang in his strongest range.
Yeah.
Okay, and to an extent, Dickinson does too. He'll have a scream or two. Halford was like the boundary.
Sure.
He was the boundary of what like a human could do. In some regards, I've not heard anyone who really can do what even is doing to this day on tour. So he would be more like an opera singer, like so the famous three tenors of opera. They had a prime, right? And then they went on their big, everybody knows Pavarotti tour, and he would not try to attempt the things where he'd hit 7 high C notes in a row because he would get booed, right? Even in Italy, like in his home country. So Halford painted himself into a corner because he's always singing at the edge of his ability. So now they've down-tuned a little bit, right? So he can hit some of those higher notes. He chooses his melodies a little differently to get to those points. Ozzy has always just kind of been in that rocking boat, going down the water, and it served him well, I think. It's like it's not like, oh, is he gonna hit that note tonight? It's gonna be like, is that the right lyric? That's the bigger problem.
Yeah.
Dudes like Lemmy, I mean, he wasn't like the high vocalist by any means.
No.
He but he was rough all the way through.
Yes, and that was your expectation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like a Brian Johnson vocal where it's rough, but that's not really his voice, right? That's really forced. I didn't see ACDC in the last couple tours that Brian Johnson did. I was just kind of curious, is he able to keep that up? Obviously, he bowed out because of his hearing, but where is his voice at?
I saw the last one, and it was actually surprisingly pretty good. It was he got off from the band at one point, and for that split second, you're like, But then I remember, okay, it's live. That's cool. That's cool. But it was actually pretty respectable. He still had it, and they haven't done anything with their tuning. They're still straight standard tuning, and they're I don't know if you guys are getting off the subject here, but they're tracking another record in Brian Johnson.
I saw that.
Oh yeah,
spotted. So that's pretty cool.
With that, I was like, okay, if they tour on this, I'm gonna go see that one.
Yeah, I will.
I don't even know why. Was it Black Ice? I was like, I'm not going. The album was okay. I should have gone.
It was a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guitar players. Ozzy's obviously had several. Who are your favorite Ozzy guitar player or players?
Randy Rhoads.
It's hard to argue. Like, who's second place is the better.
Okay, there you go. Who's second place? We probably all agree Randy Rhoads is the man.
100%, yeah.
You know what's weird though is like when I was younger, I was all about Jakey Lee because that was Bark at the Moon, right? And then the Ultimate Sin. So that was who I identified with. And then when I got older, understood the instrument and what you can do with it a little bit. Not that I could do it, but understood what people were capable of. Like, oh, Randy Rhoads is fucking brilliant. That he's the man.
Yeah, I often wonder what the world would be like had he stuck around. And there'd be stories of they'd play a show in some city, and as you guys know from touring, there's so much downtime, and especially when you're not setting your own stuff up, right? You just walk on for an hour and a half or whatever. He would find the local guitar maestro or whatever and have a lesson just come to him at the arena.
Yeah.
He said somebody took that instrument so seriously. Part of me thinks that the rock and roll life would have worn him out, and he would have kind of what Alex Skolnick did when he left Testament. It's like, I need to go kind of be a guitar guy for a while.
Yeah.
I kind of think Randy might have done that at some point.
Well, he was talking about it, like there's a couple Ozzy books I read, but one of them, Rudy Sarzo's book, was talking about Randy was planning on leaving Ozzy. He wanted to do stuff like that, and Rudy was thinking about leaving Ozzy because he was kind of having trouble with like all the satanic imagery. And so they were both, the two of them, talking to each other while Ozzy's passed out in his hotel room, thinking, this might be our last tour. Randy, like, I want to go be a guitar teacher. And Rudy goes, I'm scared. I just want to go somewhere else.
I've read a lot about how the band was not supposed to be like a solo thing. It wasn't Ozzy. It was supposed to be Blizzard of Oz. And I think from that point on, it really seemed like there was kind of that temperament and a little bit of extra stress on the band, or they weren't getting the credit they deserved for absolutely like writing an amazing record.
Right.
And clearly Ozzy didn't write any of the music. I mean, I don't believe he wrote most of the lyrics on that album, if I'm not mistaken.
And I remember having a hard time with No More Tears when you go through and read all the songwriting credits.
Yeah.
It was just all these names.
That was an album where they more than any other album sought songwriters
right
out of the band. Other albums like Lee Kerslick, is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
He would write a lot of the lyrics. Bob Daisley would write a lot of lyrics. And, people bash Ozzy saying, he doesn't have any real talent. But he did write a lot of his lyrics. Maybe not a lot. He wrote some, and, there's always the stories that he would come up with melodies and hum them into a tape recorder.
Randy
into
would
the phone.
transcribe them, that kind of thing.
That he definitely understands his job.
Right.
He's not just the guy on the stage.
And he came from Sabbath too, where Geezer to this day has always written the lyrics.
Yeah,
right.
So that wasn't
ever something he was even really known for. He was more the energy. He was more the face, like bring everybody together. But then he started kind of getting bashed for it a bit. And had it even stayed within the realm of the four guys in the band, I probably would have never had an issue with it, because they started seeking out songwriters. Now that there's all these producers and record label guys and handlers behind the scenes. It's like, we know how to make the best Ozzy record. And I would take an issue with that.
Imagine how big he was at that time, though,
right.
And how much money was wrapped up in it. And it's not just Ozzy. There's a lot of people who are providing for their families off of Ozzy, right? And so this has got to be as big as it can possibly be, because look at all these mouths we've got to feed.
Yeah.
The pressure of that, though.
Yeah. How do you continue to deliver at that level?
That was kind of the end of the major label peak. Right?
Yeah.
Well, the days were numbered. The internet was born late 90s and downloading started early 2000s. Like, that was when records were still sold by the millions, right? And you're pressured to perform on that so you could afford the caviar dinner for the band who was in town. This giant machine,
Basically a traveling economy at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
It really was.
You go back to the quality of the vocals, and if they have a tape or they're using a backup vocalist, to cancel the show is a no can do.
Right.
We can't. It's not some punk band that rolls into town and, we're sick, we can't play, and the 24 kids that were going to go get their $10 back.
Well, I guess in Black Sabbath days it was, though.
Not for too long, but not for too long though.
Yeah.
I mean, for what? Maybe their first couple tours, and then there were people who were dependent on that band for their own livings, and they weren't in the band, but you got stage guys, you got the driver, you got an army of people. There
was a famous Maiden show in the early days, right? Either the first album had just come out or was about to come out, where Paul Di'Anno was going through, coming off a bender or something like that and couldn't sing. And Steve Harris goes, "Show must go on."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm going to sing." And he sang the whole set, like maybe 2/3 of the songs, because he sings in key, he doesn't have a particularly strong voice. But that was that whole mentality of rock and roll, show must go on.
Just go.
Yeah. You've got, Kiss Paul Stanley's having a lot of problems right now, and next year's supposedly be the final tour, and I've been wondering what's kind of going on behind the scenes right now to try to get Paul Stanley's voice in shape, or are they going to do like 2 days on, 3 days off? Like, what are they going to do? Did you go to the show? Did either of you guys go to the show up in Cheyenne?
The pre-show?
The Kiss.
Oh, no, I didn't.
That was what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
Cheyenne Frontier Days?
Yeah.
And Paul Stanley was struggling.
Really?
And I had never heard Paul Stanley sound like that. Paul Stanley's always just been this killer vocalist. But I was like, wow, Paul Stanley is really struggling. And then started reading Blabbermouth and other places that this show he sounded horrible in this show. And Gene sang this song even though it was Paul's, and some weird shit there.
Is it just kind of rough? Like,
it's just rough, and Paul Stanley does a lot of high-end stuff, and his voice just not just cracking, but just blowing out. Just sounding bad.
It speaks to a bigger thing that I have a hard time talking about. It's just our era of these bands.
Yeah.
We're seeing the end of it. It's really hard to watch. And one thing Ozzy has had going for him is that he was, in his, I guess maybe in the if you watch like early Sabbath stuff, he was singing. He was pretty strong.
Yeah.
But he's always kind of had that C+.
Yeah.
So he's been constant.
Yeah.
For
sure.
But a lot of these other guys are coming down for a pretty high place.
Look at
it's really hard to watch it.
David Coverdale, Whitesnake, and for a long time, probably one of the biggest, greatest voices in hard rock, heavy metal. And I've always liked Whitesnake, and they turned into this hairband or whatever. Their early stuff was killer. Actually, I liked almost all their stuff, but this, what was it with Priest at Red Rocks, where he blew out his vocals like 2 songs in?
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, he ended up having surgery after that, and then they just came through, right? And was like, I'm gonna go. I was like, I don't know if I really want to go. I don't know if David Coverdale can do it. And watching video, I'm like, he can't. He's got the guitar player and the bass player, whoever he has these days. They're filling in for him, and he's just smiling and holding out the mic,
getting an audience.
Yeah, and I feel bad for him, for any of these guys, because they grew up. This is their careers. This is all they know, and they still get just so much enjoyment out of it, but then not to be able to do it anymore.
Right.
Dawkins had that same issue too.
Oh yeah,
they did that super brief Japanese tour to try it out. And they were like, it wasn't quite what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so they all got back together without him.
Yep.
We were great. Let's go start a side band.
We still got our shit together.
Yeah. Def Leppard. When I had never seen Def Leppard before. It's crazy, but seeing him with Kiss. Kiss was good at this show. Paul Stanley, but Joe Elliott, Phil Collins sang all the real high-pitched stuff, and then Joe Elliott held the mic out in the crowd a lot on the choruses and stuff.
Phil Collins kind of the Michael Anthony of that band.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yep.
Yeah.
You got bands like Quiet Riot just giving their tickets away.
Well, there's nobody in the... Well, it's Frankie Banali. Frankie Banali is...
Yeah.
He was the drummer.
I actually got handed probably 40 tickets last night at his show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we'll go back to, who is... So, we all agreed on Randy Rhoads. Who's the second best guitar player?
For importance to keeping Ozzy a valid artist, I have to give it to Zach. Just, he was there during the second most popular, arguably. Like, no disrespect to Jakey Lee, but I think there was an uptick after Ultimate Sin to No More Tears. I thought it was just another plateau. And right now, he's helping him go out strong. Young... I mean, he was 18, right, when The Rest of the Wicked was recorded. Young Zakk Wylde was pretty funny, I thought. I remember seeing some early interviews on Dinger's Ball. I was like,
they're all wasted.
It was just, I can't, it almost means like, I'm sitting here with Ozzy. I'm 18. Like, I can't even drink.
Yeah.
Kind of thing like that. He kind of come across as a lone kid. You made that comment earlier. I've come to really appreciate eccentricity. And it goes back to that whole thing, but there's no mystery left with the social media nature of music anymore. That, like, I used to love Ted Nugent, and then when he started opening his mouth and talking politics and worldview, I was like, I can't stand that guy. And then I watched the behind the music on him about what a disaster he's been, and it completely reset it. I'm like, oh, this guy's completely harmless. He's just an idiot and a really good guitar player. And like,
he's one that he and I talk about a lot.
Yeah,
like
I really
the Nuge, some great music, but God, I can't.
I'm not putting Zach in the same category as like going out and spouting about stuff, but he does have that eccentricity. There's just so few true rock stars left.
Yeah.
And he doesn't try to outshine Ozzy, but he's right in the pocket with him. He's still got that rough around the edges. I remember one time he's like, I don't shower on the road. And I started scratching my head. My head started bleeding. And my wife goes, "You need," and like, this is so ridiculous. There's so little of that left anymore.
Yeah, he talked about he wouldn't shower on the road. He wouldn't change out of his stage clothes. Like, these are just my clothes. I'm gonna wear these leathers till they melt or whatever. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Like Man of War, another band like that. I went when they played the Buffalo Rose of all places.
And you got up and played with them at that show
on stage.
That's awesome.
I forgot to tell you, 3 days before that, because Buffalo Rose was just starting to do metal shows again. They said, you can get tickets at the venue, and I live in Golden, so like, all right, let's go down to the bar. And I kind of walked in, and it was like a Wednesday night, no one was there, and the bartender's like cleaning glasses. And I go, hey, can I get a couple tickets to the Manowar show on Saturday? Right, this is 4 nights before the show. And he goes, yeah, sure. And he goes, they're right over there. And Joey DeMaia was sitting with a couple of the roadies in a booth, just having a beer.
Oh, no shit!
They got there way early. Wednesday night, not a soul in the place. Right, he's in fucking leather pants, his leather vest, and his gauntlets. Like,
just having a beer.
Like, living it, man.
Hell yeah!
Oh, that's amazing.
And I kind of put Zach in that whole thing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring up a guitarist that nobody talks about, and he didn't track with him, but was Joe Holmes. Do you remember that short stint?
Yeah.
And when they did Ozfest in '97 at Mile High and Sabbath, it was Ozzy and then a Sabbath set. And I remember going, man, Joe Holmes smokes that guy. And he had that beat up Stratocaster, and he never wore a shirt on stage. And he had kind of like he had bathed in weeks or something. But got there and just threw down. I remember being really excited, thinking, God, I hope this guy tracks with him.
Yeah,
that's going to bring a little bit of edge back to it. And then he went off, and I don't remember. I don't even remember what happened on the next album, but I remember Joe Holmes didn't get his. I wish I could have seen him record with him.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I remember I thought he was really cool. Who would you say is your number 2?
I would probably have to go with Zach. I mean, I'm not a huge Black Label fan by any means, but I've been watching a lot of videos from this current tour and like just seeing the way where it's not necessarily the Zach Wilde show, but when it needs to be, it is.
Thing,
yeah, it's been kind of neat to see them like grow and kind of mature and to see him slide back in now and just get it. And I think for me, it's more than just the showmanship. It's just he's an integral part of the band, and he steps up when he has to step up, and he knows when it's Ozzy's time, and he steps back. And I mean, some of the stuff he did in the '90s, I thought was brilliant. And, I mean, a lot of that was stuff I grew up on too at that time, like being in middle school and high school.
He was definitely a product of that generation. When he when Black Label Society opened for Priest at First Bank Center, right? I forgot, that was the Epitaph tour, I think.
Yeah.
Thin Lizzy opened, and I dug it. And a lot of people, I think, were
Thin
like,
Lizzy
who are
rules,
these
dude.
guys? And all that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really rad set. And then Black Label came on next, and I believe they're pulling drapes in front of the stage. But I love when bands do that, 'cause you don't see the stage being built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they pulled the drapes open, and Zach had this giant Indian headdress on, and it was a complete wall of Marshall stacks, like old school.
That's awesome.
And everything like that. And I don't remember the name of the song they opened with, and my wife went to that show, and she'd never seen a metal show that big. And just watching her face, like, you know, Zach is up there with us, like, this is a guy born from that generation. And I have to say, I have to kind of embrace that.
Yeah.
Right? Because now, like, bands are all about playing direct, because they don't want to bring so much gear on the road, so they don't really even bring an amp. They have maybe like a little rack mount they plug into the PA, and that's just the era we were from. Like, I get teased a lot because we try to bring full stacks to as many shows as we can fit on the stage or have room in the van for, or whatever. And they go, man, doesn't that kill your back? Yes, it does. But that's the show. Like, that's what you suffer for. Is the amps are like a part of the show.
for
The
sure,
backdrops, the lights, like the excess.
Well, you're talking about
Zach's about that.
Yeah, and you're talking about Matt Pike earlier. Last time Sleep was here, he had 12 orange amps, and he played through every single one of them.
Right,
and it was
everyone's
amazing
growing.
because no one does it anymore, and it's just it's so exciting. And
It
I mean, it was a
really is.
massive sound.
It's as much a part of the stage show as any, you know, statue or backdrop or laser or smoke, you know, anything like that. Like the amps are, you know, they're all hot. That's
for
really
sure.
cool. Zach's from that school.
Who would you go with second guitar player?
Yeah, I'd go with Zach, just because he was on all the records that I got when I was little and I started to really listen to Ozzy.
I think we're all in agreement there.
Yeah.
I'd say No Rest for the Wicked. I'd still say is one of Ozzy's finest albums. You put that on, there's not a bad song on it.
Super underrated.
And it's that album is almost like the perfect heavy metal album. It's just a fucking badass record, man. So, what are your as many as you can name off top Ozzy albums in what order, Devin?
Ooh, I think I would probably have to go with Bark at the Moon first. I think it's the one I reach for immediately. Gosh, I don't even know. I will say I do listen to a lot of Tribute. I just think that's with Randy Rhoads. It's such, I mean, I don't know, reading the liner notes and everything in that, and the little letter on the back to his mom.
Yeah.
It's just like such an amazing record. After that, dang, man, put me on the spot. I mean, I think I like No More Tears a ton. I think that's one I remember riding my bike to go buy when it came out, and it was just brilliant. After that, shit.
It was a smart album. It was like a really mature album.
It was.
Like even the song itself, No More Tears,
Yeah.
right?
I've never seen the video on
pretty daring.
Headbangers Ball and all that.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I never really heard anything like that kind of weird bass line.
Yeah.
It was a pretty...
It was a
You know, it was
record for sure.
No Rest for the Wicked was a heavy metal album, pretty
by the book.
formula for the day, right? And then No More Tears was different. That was like uncharted
That was
territory.
the first single, too. That's pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
It was.
Right, to have something that kind of progressive.
And he came out with a different look, right? His hair was all pulled back tight, you know?
Round glasses.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, this is Ozzy, this is different. But it was
different, but it didn't feel inauthentic by any means. It was just, it was growing with the times and
for sure.
stepping it up a little bit. It was a great record.
Dustin, how would you rate your Ozzy albums?
Oh, let's see here. Well, Diary of a Madman, I really enjoy that one. That's
agreed.
That's up there. So that's probably one. And then like Bark at the Moon kills it. And then, oh man, it's hard, man, because Ozzy is so good. But yeah, I like that. No More Tears is great, but definitely Diary of a Madman's probably my
Great
banger.
record, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Diary again, and that was an album that when I was learning guitar. I would just take albums to my teacher, and he'd say some lessons would be theory and actual technique, and then other times he's like, "Hey, bring some songs in style you want to learn." And I'd bring in Diary of a Madman, and he taught me the intro of the title track and a few other songs, and some of like the deep cuts on that, like Sailing Across the Ocean, and some of those B-sides or side B songs were so good. That's probably my number one. It's kind of a toss-up between Blizzard of Oz and No More Tears for... You guys remember that it was live in Rochester, New York? It was just like in a soundstage, and it was a lot of famous footage of Randy playing, but he's playing Mr. Crowley songs just straight through a Les Paul.
Yep.
And like, the two albums kind of blur, but I'll put Diary first. No More Tears again was a big album. It was in high school. There's tons of singles off it. It was kind of like... not comparing the albums because not even you can't even compare them, but Hysteria kind of had an endless supply of singles.
Yeah, Dr.
Right?
Feelgood had endless supply of singles.
Right, and No More
Tears was one of those albums.
Way.
Yeah,
it really was. It had Road to Nowhere, The Mama I'm Coming Home, and Mr. Tinker Train was one of the early singles as well. And remember they had
I Don't Want to Change the World.
I Don't Want to Change the World, and they had the shorter edit of No More Tears. I used to get pissed off because they'd play that one more times they play the full length one, and I was like, oh, I know they cut that short, right? And that was the first time I saw them. I just moved to Colorado, and they played Mick Nichols and just hit I Don't Want to Change the World and all those real staple songs. And then I'm going to come back to Osmosis. I think that one kind of had the same grit that No Risk for the Wicked.
I'm going to have to jam that album tonight.
Yeah, and Perry Mason was...
That's a great song.
A great song. I agree.
You know, and there were some pretty bruising songs on that record.
I'd go... easy answer for me is by far and large Diary of a Madman. It's just brilliant. The album cover, everything. I think my number two, because it was my introduction and just you're real impressionable at that age stuff, is Bark at the Moon. From there I go No Rest for the Wicked. I have to say is my number three. And then my number four, and which pushes Blizzard of Oz down. I know Randy's on that album, some brilliant songs on that album, but gets pushed down a little bit. Speak of the Devil. I mean, I get it. It's all Ozzy, or it's all Sabbath. I say covers.
Brad Gillis.
But Brad Gillis, man, fucking rips that album.
I need to dig that one.
I need to go back to that one. I haven't listened to that in a long time.
I love that fucking record, man. I remember, and he sounds crazy on it. You know, Ozzy's, the madman is back. Ow! You know, it's just, he just sounds crazy, absolutely crazy. And I remember picturing that performance in my head as a kid. Oh, it's fucking huge. Just 20,000 people there to see Ozzy. Then, what was the DVD set he put out a few years ago? There's a footage from the live at the Ritz, and it's
like a theater.
And then I was like, oh wait, the Ritz in New York, like the same Ritz that DRI's videos. Yeah. Oh yeah, the Ritz is like the Ogden or something, you know, and like and the video footage of the stage is tiny. He doesn't have any hair. When he was one of the times where he cut all his hair off. And like that's a wig. Speak of the Devil album cover, he's wearing a wig.
Good James Fonda.
That was the thing. So Rudy Sarzo's book, I think, is it called Going Off the Rails or something like that? After Randy had died, there was no time for mourning. They were back on the road in 2 weeks. They pull in Bernie Torme? Is that who they pulled in to play guitar?
I don't remember either. Sounds right.
Yeah. They were back on the road in 2 weeks, and Ozzy's like, I can't do this. So he shaved his head because he's like, if I shave my head, they won't put me on stage. And they're like, put this fucking wig on and get back out.
The show must go on.
And he's like, well, if I drink myself into a stupor, or I'm falling down drunk, they can't put me on stage, and they shove cocaine in him and put him back on stage. And he wanted out. He's like, I can't do it. And talk about he had no time to mourn. It's a Rudy saying that damaged him. I have this comic book, this Ozzy comic book, that the way kind of really in this comic, the way they describe it is like there was John Michael Osbourne, and then there was Ozzy Osbourne, and at that point, those two beings merged as one. There was no more John Michael Osbourne after that.
Gotcha.
They just kept him loaded and full of drugs and on the road, and it didn't allow him to go back and be John Michael Osbourne and mourn Randy's death. And it was just the show must go on.
Do you remember the home video that came out after No More Tears? And he's talking about when they shot the video for Crazy Train was well after Randy had passed. And he said they needed to get the guitar out because, they superimpose it going over the railroad tracks in the video. And he said he opened the case, and it hadn't been opened since Randy had died. And he goes, it was really weird. The strings were all rusty. And there was like little bits like his cigarettes and his lighter and some guitar picks in there. It was kind of one of the more, poignant moments in that video that speaks that morning he wasn't really allowed to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
What show is that? Oh, Ozzy and Jack's World Detour. I think it was it season 1 where they go to that mountain in is it in Pennsylvania? It's like Steel Mountain or something like that, where it's the Sony record. There's this vault. Like basically, if we get hit by nukes and whatever, this vault is so so far underground that anything in this vault will survive. And Sony has a bit. Sony has some chambers or whatever rooms in this vault, and in there. There's pictures and tracks and reel-to-reels of the originals of all Sony Records artists and stuff, and there's pictures, and so the Ozzy's there and Jack, and they're taking the tour, and they go through the photos, and they're pulling out, and there's pictures of Ozzy and Randy in there, and then they pull out the original reel-to-reel of the Diary of a Madman sessions.
Wow.
And they got a player in there too. So if we get nuked and you got these, you can still play them because they thought ahead and include the reel-to-reel players in these vaults. The guy in there puts it on and lets Ozzy hear it, and he separates out the guitar track. These are the raw original Diary of a Madman tracks that haven't been played since then.
Sure.
And Ozzy starts crying. And I was just watching this, eating my hot wings, we were watching Jack, and then I'm like choked up, eyes swelling up, like, fuck, man, that was heavy. That was really heavy, man.
What did you guys think of the whole Osbournes thing, the reality show? I was a card carrying proud member that never watched it. I refused to watch it.
I watched it, but I don't know. It got harder as it progressed, just knowing how many narcotics he was on and that he was just in this stupor. Well, because I think as it progressed, they really started to just kind of play off of his absent-mindedness.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know, kind of felt like they were
kind of suffering.
Yeah, and like the dude's clearly not having a good time, and he's talked about it since. And I haven't revisited it since the first time I watched it through, and I never will, quite frankly. But
I don't know how many seasons they did. I think I watched that first season, and they changed it. They changed a lot of things. I remember George Bush at the White House Correspondents' Dinner or whatever, and Ozzy was invited. I'm like, why is Ozzy invited to that? That's not fucking heavy metal. And George Bush going, Mom loves your music, Ozzy, or loves your show, Ozzy. And I was like, oh, this is so wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's not speak of the devil with fake jelly blood coming out of your mouth and eating bats and shit. Like, you're having dinner with George Bush, and
It speaks that whole dichotomy that, right, we always had marginalized music growing up, and even now, right? And you would get angry, like, oh, popular kids this and blah, blah, but we got our music. You secretly wanted to be accepted until the moment it became big. And then you're like,
accepted.
Fuck that.
Nobody gives us a chance, man.
You give them a chance, you go to the White House, like, dude, that's fucking bullshit. That's not rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's this total can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I'm like,
That way with metal and punk and skateboarding and all that type
I want
of stuff.
pseudo-satanic Ozzy back. Where's that guy?
Say excuse me and like walk away from like George Bush and like start pissing on the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
You want something like that to go down, right?
it's really, I mean, I guess when I think back on it, it was really just his way to stay relevant and try to pull a new audience.
Sure.
But since they've been doing, like, when they did the Sabbath tour, now the new tours, I kind of feel like a lot of that's just kind of been removed from Ozzy's history in a way.
Yeah,
with specific fans.
It has
like,
been kind of forgiven.
No one discusses it. It doesn't come up anymore.
And if you think about it, it had been done before, right? Like at Elvis. Right, Elvis, rebel rock and roll, and then making all these stupid movies. Right, the Beatles made their movie, Sha Na Na, whoever. Right, artists that they had taken turned into a commodity and
Right. Entertainment package.
Yeah, and VH1 kept the lights on for 10 years with stuff like that. So.
Yeah, for sure.
point.
Yeah.
Spinal Tap was a good thing, making fun of all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so.
Absolutely. And I guess I'd bristle a little bit because I got friends from all walks of life, just like I'm sure like you guys do. And I have like certain friends who know something about metal, or like I listened to that back in high school, but then maybe since gave it up. And then a lot of people kind of, other than work or whatever, kind of keep me at arm's length. But when someone would say, "Oh, that Ozzy," and their only exposure was some reality show,
Sure.
fuck.
That bums me out.
Yeah.
Listen to this album.
Yeah,
then you can
exactly.
be scared and hate him. Like you
Yeah.
can't hate him for that because that's not real Ozzy.
Yeah.
And I always just, it always bothered me. So, but then again, he's kind of come back, kind of like a third wind, fourth wind. I don't
Yeah.
lost track
Yeah.
of how many there are, but now he's out again. And 13 was a good album, and Black Sabbath album, and
So it's No More Tours too, because the original No More Tours. The other day he said he wanted to keep playing some shows, and people started losing their minds. I told you it's not his farewell tour. What are your thoughts on that? Is it a fair?
I wonder how much Sharon is involved. That's a whole
Sure.
other podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like she might be, and I'm gonna give her some credit here. She might be the brakes that keeps it from getting really bad.
Yeah.
And if she thinks he's got about one more with a strong backing band of Zach and all the guys again, where people hopefully will remember that. If he does a one-off for something like that,
Sure.
comes off and does 4 songs for the Grammys,
I think it'll be something more like that, or some festival appearances.
Yeah,
So that's kind of how it felt in that Blabbermouth interview, where he was clearly kind of like hamming it up a little bit, being intentionally vague until the tour's over. But I could see him still doing like a handful of dates here and there.
For sure, string a few dates together.
Well, I mean, he's pushing 70. I can't see the dude doing another world tour.
Yeah, he'll be 70 in December, and he's 70 years old. He can't go out and do a 10-month long world tour.
I think he's actually doing it just because he actually really loves the music.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that Ozzy still loves it, and back to, I think he would, in his heart, wants to continue.
Yeah,
but
being able to say no.
Yeah.
You know, when he said also, and this was a little bit of a bummer, he was talking about how he's happy to be on the road with his band now, because during the Black Sabbath tour, he said, I just feel like a singer for that band, and they kind of look at me a little weird when I go and run on stage and be Ozzy. And I was a little disappointed to hear that, because obviously I worship the ground that Iommi and Butler walk on. But that wasn't, he said it didn't end as happy as he thought it might have, because he wanted to be Ozzy, and he goes, that was never my band.
See, I wonder, what is it like from Black Sabbath's perspective? Like, hey, we're Black Sabbath, we invented this shit. Like, but then Ozzy's just with us or without us, he's just as big as we are.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always wondered what how many cuss words behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Sure, there's plenty.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Sabbath, we're done. And I was like, I've got my other band. I'll go roll out an Ozzy tour. See you guys.
Right.
It was always Iommi's ship, too. And I imagine that if things got hairy during the tour, he was the one that pulled Ozzy aside. Or probably talked to Sharon about it, I'm sure.
Yeah,
right.
And so, I don't know. I'm excited to see Ozzy just be Ozzy and have a good time. And
sure.
It's going to be fun, man. I'm excited to take my kids.
Yeah, you're taking your kids.
Taking my boys, and they're excited. And they're actually, I know sometimes he gets a little bit of backlash for playing some Sabbath songs, but like, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Actually, my youngest son, his favorite song is Iron Man, and I've pulled some of the set list, and he's been playing that regularly again. So he's excited. It's cool to share that stuff, and I hope that everybody that goes kind of gets that feeling too. That it's an event, man.
I'm taking my kids, and that's how we ended up at that Sabbath show in Vegas years ago. It was funny how that happened. Like, I collect Ozzy and Sabbath stuff. I know you do too.
I do, yeah.
And I had gotten a DVD in the mail of the Never Say Die tour. Was it '78? And like, oh, it's fucking cool. I put it on, and my buddy Mikey had just called me like a day or two before. And he's like, hey, we should go to Vegas and see Sabbath. And I'm like, okay, when is it? And he's like, oh, it's Labor Day weekend. I was like, I usually got my kids on Labor Day weekend, man. I don't think I can make it. Put on the DVD, and the kids are like, cool, you got a new Sabbath DVD. I'm like, yeah, let's check it out. And they're like, at the time my son was 5, so it would have made my daughter like 12 probably. And like, Dad, like, Black Sabbath's really famous, huh? I'm like, yeah, you know, they basically invented heavy metal. Like, can we go see them someday? He's like, let me call your mom. He's like, hey, can I take the kids to Las Vegas to see Black Sabbath?
Imagine that conversation. Can you imagine your parents? Your parents. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Maybe you were lucky. You were lucky.
But then, you know, so we go to Vegas and see Sabbath. And back to what you were talking about earlier with, like, religious protesters and hitting the pamphlets, dude.
Yeah.
We were crossing the bridge over the strip to the NGM where the show was, and there were religious protesters and deliberately tried to get the kids around, and we didn't really want to confront them or anything, you know, like, let's just get by. And somehow one of the guys slipped my friend Mikey's son a pamphlet. And we go to the show, and so we go down, we get to the show, and the MGM, like, there's one merchandise booth. Fucking worst
That's
setup
awful.
venue ever. Like, everybody comes in, it's like 6 sets of
Cattle
double
shoot.
doors into the one merch stand, and then it's that way to fill in the stadium or the arena. It's fucked. So I was like, all right, let's get the kids down to the seats, and then everybody tell me what, I'll go make a t-shirt run, you know. And so we get out, okay, boom, I bolt out, and paying for the shirts, and the opening was just Andrew WK DJ.
Weird.
Yeah, it was totally weird. I don't know why that was what it was, but that's what it was. But I hear boom, 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 boom. Right? He opens with Slayer, Raining Blood, DJing, and I'm like, my son's 5. He's never been to a concert before. I'm like, fuck. Grab all the shit, grab a couple beers, fucking hauling ass back to the seats. I get there, and my son's standing on his seats, both hands in the air. Just
Daddy
fucking-
moment.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
then
great.
the DJ ended, Andrew WK ended, and my son's like, oh my God, it was amazing, wow, wow. Wow, I'm gonna go to another concert. I'm like, dude, Sabbath hasn't played yet. He's just
That
like,
was it.
Sabbath's still playing. It's like, and I'll tell you, one of the most heart-melting moments of my life, and, you know, he was only 5, so he was a big kid, but he was smaller than that. He was able to still stand on his chair and not piss the people off behind him. Stand on his chair through the whole show like this for the opening band plus the 2 hours of Sabbath. His arms had to be cramping, I'm sure. And watching him sing, Iron Man was his favorite song, but sing along, watching my kids sing along to Black Sabbath, man, I was like, that's
great.
life, man. That's the secret of life right there. It was just, man.
Religious
I know.
protesters.
I'm excited.
Oh, so we get we don't know that he got slipped this pamphlet, and somewhere after the show, I think we went to the arcade or whatever, you know. But we were kids, so we didn't stay out super late. We get back to the hotel. Somewhere in there, Ash, Mikey's son, was able to show this pamphlet to my son without us seeing. And we wake up in the middle of the night, Ash screaming, I'm going to hell! I'm going to hell! And we're like, I'm ready to waking up the whole room. He's screaming and crying, and we're like, what's going on? He's like, I'm going to burn in a fiery lake for eternity. And we're like, why? What are you talking about, man?
The dog.
And he's like, they said we were going to because we saw that concert, and I want my mom. And we get the pamphlet away from him. Like, let me see that. And I kept it. He's like, that's good stuff for flyers and stuff.
Yeah.
But my son handled it really well. We calm Ash down, like you're not going to hell. You know, you'll be cool, you'll be all right. With that said, though, that show versus when we caught him in Denver, that show was way more evil. Like, they had upside down crosses and bats, and they made it way more just evil in general. And I was like, wow, this is freaking cool. And different people I know that had seen him on that tour. My sister's Catholic, and she went to that show. I was like, I wonder how she fared at that show, because imagery they were showing was, pictures of the church and the Pope, and like they were, laid it on thick.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we get Ash calmed down. Everybody gets back to sleep, and then like 2 days later, ex-wife calls me. And it's like, you gotta. Starts yelling at me about, now my son's talking about that we're gonna burn in hell and all this shit. Like, oh god. Like, no. I'm like, trying to explain to her, they slipped the kids some pamphlet. We didn't know that they had this, you know. Like, it's like, you have to explain this all to your son. I'm like, basically telling me he's okay.
Coming out of Slayer, I know you guys had the Slayer podcast. There was a guy sitting on the sidewalk across the intersection on the north side, and he had a giant sign saying "Jesus saves." And it's like, that song rules, man! Yeah. He didn't even realize that was a Slayer song. Yeah. Everyone's throwing the horns. He's so confused. What's going on?
That's great.
That was like an era, man. That was the 80s. And I guess
are they still doing that?
A little bit.
Still the religious protest?
Well, there's the, what's the place, where are they out in Nebraska or Kansas? That church that pickets everything?
Oh, they're out of Kansas.
Westboro.
Yeah,
Westboro Baptist Church, yeah.
They're at Topeka.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a guy about it earlier today. We probably talked about it in the last podcast. So we saw Slayer at the Mammoth with Testament. I don't know if that was South of Heaven or Seasons in the Abyss tour, but that was the first time that I ever saw religious protesters at a concert. And I wasn't scared. I was like, wow, that's cool. This is legit, man. You know, like,
yeah.
They're pissed off. This is going to be good.
This band must be awesome.
Yeah. I think I was more scared of the guy. I think, again, like I said in the last one, the guy coming out on a stretcher already, bloody, and Testament haven't even played yet. That's awesome. Freaking me out more than the protesters. Like, whoa, we're in for it tonight.
I remember when they showed up to Dio's funeral.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, this is going to be great because my hope was that I got a little out of hand because I was like, might be the first group that finally just doesn't put up with that shit.
Yeah,
right.
Unfortunately, it was mellow. Yeah, I was like, this is great. I was like, all these Sabbath and old metal fans might just finally like call the card on these guys, but it ended up being mellow.
Right.
All right, we're probably getting near the end here. What do you anything you want to say about Ozzy that you didn't get a chance to say, or any
Ozzy Knuckles?
Dude. One time, the scars are in there somewhere. I can kind of see them a little bit still. My buddy and I, we were big Ozzy fans. Joe McCumbee. We were drunk, right? And we didn't even have any India ink. We used a pen just like this, a big pen. Broke it, squeezed all the ink out of it, the tube into a paper plate. And scooping up with a safety pin, jamming Ozzy into our knuckles.
Dude, my brother, he did it for years. He would write Ozzy on both his knuckles in a big pin, and I thought that was going to be. And he was a little kid, he was still in elementary school, and he did that until he went into junior high. And then, eventually I thought, like, oh, that's going to be his first tattoo. But yeah, he never did get it as a tattoo, but he wrote it on every day before he went to school.
I did that.
He would write it on his knuckles.
I was probably in 7th grade because I'd write Ozzy across my knuckles with a Sharpie or a pen if I didn't have a Sharpie. And then, those desks you had in school back then, I'd write the Ozzy logo on my desk, super big, every day. And Mr. Hughes was the teacher, and he would call me Little Ozzy. And my first rock and roll shirt was a Ozzy Osbourne Diary of a Madman shirt, and I'd have my mom wash that for me every night, so I'd wear it to school every day. Wash it,
great.
Hang it up to dry, it'd be dry by morning, put it back on, go to school, my Ozzy shirt, write Ozzy on my desk. This is the same class where we read Charge of the Light Brigade, and my chocolate milk almost came out my nose, man. I'm reading holy shit, it's the Trooper! It's the Trooper, man! Iron Maiden!
Super cool.
Any wrap it up words, farewell words?
I don't think so. Yeah, thanks for having
Plug
us, man.
zone.
2 weeks out from seeing
What's
Ozzy.
that?
Plug zone. Anyone want to plug things?
Anyone want to plug things? Shout out to anything?
Go buy a record from a record store.
I know where there is one.
Yeah.
But again, I thank Sean for taking care of us here. Bustin Dustin, skate local, shop local. Keith Spargo, or Silencer. Devin, how do you say your last name, Devin?
Rambo.
Yeah. Kind of like Rambo, except not.
That was my nickname for a while when I was a kid,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was called worse too, but I'll take that one. It's the only one that stuck.
All right, so actually, finally, maybe semi-final. Your Black Sabbath tattoo, let's see it.
Yeah. It's got an inverted cross Black Sabbath tattoo on the back of my arm. I've actually been considering getting an Ozzy tattoo also. That was just kind of a nice filler.
Yeah.
It was impulse, and I know you've got a Sabbath tattoo too.
So Devin, I met him in the record store here. He's just been coming in since we opened. And then I noticed that Sabbath tattoo one day, and then it's been friends on Facebook seeing that was as big, if not bigger, Ozzy fan as I am. Tell me about the plate, the Ozzy Osbourne
Oh my
plate
god!
that you got.
It was a incredibly drunken purchase. So I found it on eBay. It's like a porcelain plate, like everybody's mom had back in the day. That has like 3 different paintings of Ozzy on it.
How big is it?
8 inches. It's
Okay.
pretty good size. Like
Yeah.
sits on top of one of my records.
Like what you might see in a magazine
Yeah.
collectible.
Oh yeah. On like every like QVC channel on a Friday night. Yeah. I don't no idea where the hell this thing came from. It's the only one I ever saw on eBay. I've been finding some of the weirdest shit. I don't think it's microwavable.
Yeah, I've got. That's where that Sabbath DVD I was talking about earlier came from. It was like after I got divorced, I'd spend a lot of nights at the bar by my house by myself, and then I'd go home and listen to Sabbath and jump on eBay, and then all this shit would just show up in the mail over the next week and a half. Like, I don't even remember. Oh, that's fucking cool. Ozzy this and Sabbath that, and like, oh yeah.
That's what I do with bootlegs a lot. Like I end up with all these like weird bootlegs. I've been collecting all the Russian bootlegs right now from Sabbath. I've got a couple of South Korean ones.
Oh really?
It's all just shit that I buy, and I'm like,
that's how
I
you're ahead of me, because that was my thing for a while there. I was like, Sabbath bootlegs, and got some killer ones, and Ozzy stuff too. I think you got that Ozzy picture disc, but it has the wrong songs on it.
Yeah,
what the label says.
It's pretty rad. There's some cool stuff like that. I've got a record that is Paranoid, but it has the cover to the self-titled album, and it still says like Paranoid across the front. It's some like weird Eastern European bootleg. It looks awesome though. Like, I mean, they sound like dog shit, but they're absolutely like beautiful records. It's really cool.
That Japanese Ozzy record that I got. It's like from the Bark at the Moon photos on the cover. Has Bark at the Moon on it, but then it's got one unreleased track. It came with a sticker sheet, a band or not a headband, an Ozzy headband.
That's
like
awesome.
All this killer shit, man. I found that on Discogs. Like I didn't even knew this existed.
I know. I got bummed when Discogs stopped selling bootlegs. I got so much cool shit off there. But
I'll close with my favorite live Ozzy memory. And did you guys see Ozfest '97 at Mile High when Black Sabbath played?
Yes.
You know, he did an Ozzy set and then a Sabbath set. And if you remember, during the song Black Sabbath, a thunderstorm rolled behind the stage. And Ozzy's got his arms out, with the tassels hanging, lightning across the sky, and it rained for just about that song. And ended. And I'm not a religious guy, but I'm like,
that's cool.
Yeah, it couldn't have been more perfect, man. I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to bring that up as well. The song opens with the thunder on the album, and that happened. The clouds roll in, light rain, that green laser.
Yep.
Oh, it was just fucking mind blowing, man.
Awesome, man.
That was
Long
fucking
live Ozzy.
cool. Anything, Dustin?
It's rad. Ozzy rules, dude.
Yeah.
Killer.
Rock and roll, man.
Thanks for having us.
Rock and roll
thank
rebel.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out and talking shit.